Now that the Utah Utes have retooled their roster through the transfer portal, they are ready to make a run at the Big 12 title in 2025.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. If it's your first time tuning into our show, make sure you like and subscribe, love, interact with everyone in the YouTube comments. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletic Department. Excited to be joined by Athlon Sports' All Utes, Elijah Grayson Murray, and we're going to talk about some of the portal misses that Utah's had and close a little bit on Utah men's and women's basketball. But first, just want to start with the fact that I do believe with the players that Utah's brought in around 15 guys now, I do believe these players, what they've replaced, and they lost a lot in the portal as well as through NFL draft declarations and all that. Elijah, I think Utah's done enough through the portal already to say they can contend in the Big 12 in 25.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I completely agree. I mean, even when you look at this past season, the two teams that were in the Big 12 championship, we kept them close the entire game without a quarterback, with terrible quarterback play. And so, like you said, we lost a lot of guys, but we also filled, especially on offense, I think we filled the holes really well, especially in the wide receiver room and the running back room. And obviously at quarterback, Devin Dampier is absolutely electric. So I think, if Beck's offense can, fully implement itself, there's no reason. You have all the pieces in place to contend for the conference championship, and I honestly expect the team to be in the championship next season.
Yeah, I think they have a great shot to do it. Back in November, right around the time of Utah's final game, I put together a list of what I felt like were the team's transfer portal needs. The list I came up with at the time was quarterback, wide receiver, interior offensive line, running back, defensive end, linebacker, cornerback, and safety. So fast forward to now, what has Utah done? They added 3 quarterback rooms, and the biggest, of course, as you already mentioned, being Devin Dampier. They added 4 wide receivers, which we're very, very excited about what the potential those guys can bring in. Only 1 offensive lineman. No, not an interior guy and not a veteran either, but still glad to bring in someone. 3 quality backs, Wayshawn Parker obviously being the best overall addition Utah probably made if you take away the value of quarterback. Brought in 2 defensive ends, both of them coming from former Pac-12 schools, now Big 10 programs. No linebacker. You got some freshmen in there and some returners. You think you'll be okay there. 3 cornerbacks and no safeties. So I really do just feel like Utah has plugged in the holes on their roster overall. And the ones that you look at and you're like, okay, well, maybe they didn't add a guy here. And we'll talk more about that in the second segment. But when you look at it, you can just say, hey, there are recruits that Utah brought in a couple of years ago who can fill in the depth. And then there's also some guys who have been waiting in the wings that are going to emerge. Keanu Tanavas is obviously a sore subject right now, but that's a guy who back in 23, actually, I had no idea he was going to be the starting D tackle next to Junior Jafuna, and he was fantastic that year. There are some guys on this Utah football roster we're not talking about. Elijah Davis, in some ways, was this last year. I thought he was a really good corner for Utah that ended up bursting onto the scene that we're not talking about right now. But when you look at what Utah has done in the portal, especially break down, like, okay, they didn't just add a wide receiver. They got 4 new receivers. Offense was a problem for this team. They invested heavy on offense, and they did a good job of replacing a couple other key spots too.
Yeah, and I also think, and this is kind of a thing that hasn't been talked about too much, but I feel like they really set up the future of the program well, especially getting a bunch of young guys in the room, especially with Wilson coming back. I think Zerbrug could be a great guy for Utah. I also think that Jamarian Ficklin could be a wonderful guy for Utah too. He has the similar skill set as Dampier, and so it all depends on how they develop, obviously, after Dampier's time is up with the program. But I think, there's a lot of young guys that came into the program as well that have set the program up for a very, electric future, especially on the offense. The defense has a lot of young guys that are already making an impact, like you said, Scooby Davis, and, you have Miss Snowden as well, who is, we're very grateful that he came back.
Yes.
Because that was the one that I was scared about the most, that he
Mhm.
made. But no, I think if we're talking about the near future, 2025, like you said, we plugged in a lot of holes that were either left missing because of the transfer portal, or just were not strong in the 2024 season. I think wide receiver, if we're going off of all the positions, I think that is the one that has improved the most as a whole.
Mhm.
Because obviously running back's great. Wayshawn Parker is a beast, but Bernard was an 1,000-yard rusher last year, and so
Mhm.
can't get much better than that in terms of production. But I think, and especially with the wide receivers, I think Otto Tia is going to have a great, season with the Utes. He brings size out wide, which you really don't have, with the current room, other than Landon Thomas, who is 6'5" and plays like a wide receiver, but
Mhm.
obviously he's a tight end. And also, if Dorian Singer comes back, which there's a lot of smoke around that, if he comes back, I
Mhm.
think like this offense could potentially be one of the most electric and most athletic on paper offensive units in the entire college football sphere, and definitely in the Big 12. I think the improvements in terms of the electricity and the athleticism that we've seen just on paper from last year to this year, or this upcoming season, it's hard to overlook. And Dampier is, obviously he didn't have a great year passing, but that's just, he's going to have much better targets with Utah, and he's going to have a full off season to kind of, get everything going. I think he's going to be a special guy, and I think the entire offensive unit, their skill sets really complement each other.
Yeah, I'm excited about this group. You mentioned Tia. You bring Davis in from New Mexico, so give Dampier guys familiar with. And yeah, he threw a lot of interceptions, but I do think there's a reason to believe, outside of the fact he just led the fourth best offense in college football, he can cut down on some of those turnovers next year with Utah, and just being such a dynamic runner gets you fired up for that. Parker being a dynamic runner too is another guy that we talked about. And Quarry Rogers, a backup back with experience. When you pair him, get Devin Green in there, also some recruits. You like the backfield. The Jackson Jones and Lance Holtzclaw combination gives Utah some more veteran edge guys to pair with Logan Fano, John Henry Daly, Paul Fitzgerald, that whole crew you got going on there. Nate Johnson's a guy we haven't mentioned yet. I think he could very well win the backup quarterback job too. I'm really intrigued by what he's going to add. Utah adding guys like Donovan Sanders, Blake Cotton in the cornerback room. And we already mentioned a guy like Brandon Zerbrug too, what he could bring. So there's a little bit of everything. Justin Stevenson's another receiver. I think he has a chance to be a big guy from Wyoming for this Utah team too. So that is a lot of talent that Utah's assembled. And the beautiful thing about what Utah's done is, if you just look at the history of the transfer portal, we know not all of these guys are going to hit and work out. I would love it if every single one of these guys balled out, was awesome, but that's just not how the transfer portal works. There's some hits, there's some misses. I think Utah's braced themselves for that by bringing in guys that, hey, if one of these guys doesn't work out for some reason, we got a few other guys that very well could. So really like what Utah's been able to do in the portal, and I do believe the holes that they've been able to fill will help them contend in the Big 12 in 2025. But does that mean portal season's been perfect for Utah? No. So we want to talk now about where Utah missed out in the portal, that if they had hit on, maybe instead of just feeling like, hey, they're going to contend, would have us maybe feel like Utah would be the favorite. Going to tell you about those additions that Utah did not make in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Wayfair. Wayfair has your back today. You can head over to Wayfair because after the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, cleaning out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that exactly fit my budget. My favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery, even for large items. Wayfair sites make it so easy to navigate, and I found everything I need in no time. There's something for everyone with every style, no matter the space or the budget. Wayfair truly makes it easy to tackle your New Year's goals of endless inspiration for your space. Did Wayfair help you find out time in a crunch? Was the delivery fast, free, hassle-free? That's what Wayfair's got for you. You can give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair. Every style, every home. You can check it out today by heading over to wayfair.com. All right, Elijah, as we were talking about, the portal season was good for Utah, but it was not perfect. So I guess the question then falls, where did Utah miss the mark in the portal, and what should they look to add in the spring portal? And maybe my very first need is a wide receiver one. I am excited and intrigued by all of the players that Utah got in the portal. I think Stevenson has wide receiver one potential from Wyoming. I think Tia has wide receiver one potential from Utah State. None of those players, though, are as good as Dorian Singer. If Utah could get Dorian Singer back, that would be big. But right now, we don't know if he's coming back. So wide receiver one, my biggest miss that Utah didn't land in the portal, a true wide receiver one. Interior offensive line. I really would have loved for Utah to add one more veteran to push that group of returners they have coming back, because the interior offensive line, they struggled last year several occasions. Utah lost Keanu Tanavas. They did not bring in a single defensive tackle to replace him. They have other guys in that room, but no one is even close to the caliber of Tanavas. Linebacker. Yes, Demooney's back. Jonathan Hall's back. Lander Barton's back. But where is the other veteran? There's no Sione Fotu. You're going to be relying on freshmen. That's another big thing there, too. And then safety. Yes, I like Rabbit Evans. I like Teo Johnson. I like Nate Ritchie. But I would have felt better if they grabbed some veteran to replace Alakai Gilman. Just another guy who could fill up in the room. So those are where, hey, I feel like Utah made themselves contenders, but I don't think they made themselves the favorites, because this roster is still missing those key spots I mentioned.
Yeah, and I'm not going to blame them too much on the defensive tackle spot right now, because obviously the Tanuvasa thing was, so impromptu, and it kind of took everyone by surprise. But I sorry. But I think that that should be the number one priority in the next transfer window. Just get another big guy in there to kind of fill the spot that Tanavasa has left. Obviously, Utah's defense is one of the or Utah's defensive staff, is one of the best in the nation at developing and cultivating that talent and growing 2 stars into NFL prospect. Devin Lloyd is the prime example of that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that linebacker, and I said this on an earlier show that I was on, but I think that's always been one of the weak spots of Utah's defense. Obviously, quarterback and safety are usually the strong points, because their development at that position specifically. But if you can get another linebacker and really get someone who can impact the game every single time he's on the field. Barton is great, and he has the potential to, but he didn't show that last season. And maybe with another full off season and more time to develop, he will be that guy, but you don't know. And so getting another guy that is similar to Barton in terms of talent, but has proven it more and more consistency, I think that's key for Utah. And I think those are the 2 biggest needs for them in the next transfer.
Yeah, I think the one thing I'll say about defensive tackle, because I agree, the timing of the Tanavasa thing hurt them. You're losing Junior Tafuna. Samote Pepa entered the portal early. Still wish they would have kicked the tires on adding another just veteran depth piece at the defensive tackle spot. And I think another thing, Elijah, that just does sting about the transfer portal so far for Utah, as encouraged as I am about some of the other pieces and things that Utah has been able to add, the fact remains they lost 2 players, Tanuvasa and Cameron Calhoun, better than anyone they gained. Now, you could say the value of Devin Dampier is high enough of the gaining a competent quarterback. I get that. But in terms of who's a better player at their position, I don't think anyone is better that Utah brought in than Tanavasa and Calhoun were at theirs. And that is something that is going to hurt.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you said, I also really like your point of getting a wide receiver one if Singer can't come back, because you have potential wide receiver ones, but you don't have a proven wide receiver one. And I think that is one thing that is crucial for Dampier, and his need to kind of have that go-to target every time. And that could also be Landon Thomas. I mean, he clearly Kyle Whittingham loves to target tight ends and use 2 tight end sets, and so Landon Thomas could be
Landon King.
or sorry, Landon King. Yeah, I don't know.
You said it a couple times now. I was like, who is Landon? I was trying to remember, like, if there's some athlete Landon Thomas, or where is that from?
Yeah, Landon King. I think Landon Thomas like an NFL tight end or something like that.
Maybe that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, but he could potentially be like a Kincaid level guy for Utah this upcoming year. So maybe you don't need a solidified wide receiver one if he turns into that guy, and you can just have role players out wide who can contribute that way. But I definitely think a wide receiver one is should Singer not come back. If he can come back, then I think that position group is completely fine. But and again, just on defense, I do agree that losing especially Peppa in hindsight is kind of a hard thing to swallow because of the Tanavas move. Tafuna, we obviously knew he was going to leave, but the other teams are only going to get better in the Big 12. Especially with the teams who came into the conference along with us. It's going to be year 2 in the conference. They're going to understand the team is better. We're also going to have new opponents, in next season. So it's going to be another unknown year in terms of opponents and who you're facing. But I think you gotta harp on those positions hard if you want to actually be in the championship game.
Mm-hmm. That's what Utah's going to have to do. You got to improve, got to get better. And the transfer portal, especially for receiver, has always been a kind of a hit or big miss for Utah. Hit on Singer, big miss on some other guys. So hopefully they're able to find a wide receiver one the next time the portal cycle opens. Landon Thomas, by the way, the number 1 tight end prospect in the nation in the class of 24 out of Georgia. So I see you, Elijah, diving into those recruiting rankings right there.
Yeah, there you go.
And I hope Landon King can have a season. I will say, I guess Thomas hasn't proven anything at this level yet, but at least what you think the number 1 tight end in the nation will do. Although we saw how much of a struggle it was for Florida State last year. I argued on my show earlier this year that Florida State was the most disappointing team in college football. Utah was like 2nd or 3rd to me, but like Florida State, everyone had them picked to win the ACC. I saw for the most part still, and for them to not even be close was a disaster. But the opposite of the disaster is the weekend Utah basketball had. Even the men's basketball team got a Big 12 win. Yes, the women's basketball team suffered a loss, but they already beat Houston, bounced back there. So we're fired up and encouraged by that. We're going to be talking about the latest on the hardwood for Utah basketball in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff game is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Game Time is a new feature called Game Picks that make getting tickets for your events even live and easier. Filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Game Time to find tickets for an upcoming game by me. It was actually an NBA game because not just on Game Time can you get college football, but NBA, you get NHL going on, college basketball. They got everything for you, basically. You also get tickets on concert, comedy, and theater events near you, too. Don't forget, you browsing through deals with Game Time's employees. I found great value on all kinds of seats around the venue. The super deal in particular stood out as the best value for the event. I love that I could see the seat view before buying, and the app shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout, plus the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all caps, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed with Game Time. All right, Elijah, talk about some Utah basketball. We're going to get to the women's basketball program in a second, but I don't know how many times the Utah men's basketball team is going to win a Big 12 game this season. So we have to start with them getting a big dub over Oklahoma State. It was great to see Utah defeat the Cowboys 83-62. Utah may disappoint in both men's basketball and football, but the fact that they're going to continue to beat Oklahoma State is something that will give me a little bit of joy. I enjoy the rivalry we're building with the Cowboys, but there was a lot of smack talk this offseason about more so Utah football at Oklahoma State. But like, I am totally down in the game with them being one of our new Big 12 rivals. So love that Utah was able to get the win there. Utah ended up outscoring Oklahoma State by over 10 points in both the first and second half. As Rassar with the big game led Utah with 21, Dawes with 16 off the bench, Jake Wallen was 16 too. Love seeing it out of this Utah men's basketball team. The Big 12 is a gauntlet. This is the first win that Utah had to against a Power 4 team. So really encouraged by what I saw from Utah over the weekend, Elijah.
Yeah, this season for the most part has gone kind of as expected for Utah men's basketball. And it is what it is at this point. But I think this win signifies, like there was some improvement with the program. And I think especially Alsar, he's kind of slowly coming into what I expected him to be when he first transferred, to the program. He was a beast at East Carolina. And I think, as they play more together, he's going to continue to put up these 20 plus point nights and like 21 points and four rebounds, one steal in 17 minutes is pretty impressive, especially going up against a Big 12 opponent who, Big 12 basketball is not easy to play. And now that conference play is actually in session, I think the next game is against TCU before you have the rivalry game against BYU. And so, I think those are two potentially winnable games. If they play how they did against the Cowboys, I think you could see Utah, the running Utes maybe go on a little streak, a little conference streak, and they could surprise us all. I hope they do. Maybe I'm foreshadowing like I did with Landon Thomas and Landon King. Who knows? Let's see.
Hey, if the running Utes can go on a little run, I think we would all love that in the Big 12. So like seeing what Craig Smith and co are putting together, building a little bit of that momentum. The Utah women's basketball team continues to build on their momentum. Yes, they had a tough loss to Kansas State, but that's still lost to a top 20 team. You bounce back against the Houston squad, 69-42. Utah is still 13-3 on the season. They're 4-1 in conference action. And yes, disappointing loss against a really good Kansas State team, but they still have that win over a really good Notre Dame team. And this is a Utah team. They've been through a lot already this season. Love what I'm seeing out of the Utah women's basketball team. They have a chance to win the Big 12. Maya Torrey is really coming into her own with this team. She's coming off another 20-point outing against Houston, which is really encouraging. This team's coming together. They're clicking. I like the way they're built. Coach Peterson is doing a great job, and I still have big expectations for Utah women's basketball for the rest of the season.
Oh, yeah, I do too. I think obviously the way they lost to Kansas State is quite demoralizing because I don't think anyone really expected them to perform that poorly. But after the Baylor game on the 14th, you have another test against number 10 TCU on the 17th, and there you can go and prove why you belong. At the top of the conference, near the top of the women's college basketball sphere. And so I think that they're really clicking on all cylinders. The bounce back win against Houston, kind of signifies that the Kansas State loss was more of a one-off thing rather than a trend that's going to start with the program. And so I don't expect them to if we're looking at their schedule right now, they have 3 more ranked opponents on their schedule: to number 10 TCU, 24 Oklahoma State, and 20 West Virginia. And I think those are all winnable games for the program when they're firing on all cylinders. And I think honestly, when they are playing how they played against Notre Dame, when they are playing how they played against Arizona State, against Houston, against Iowa State, they're near unbeatable. And I think that's as the season goes on. I think that the Kansas State loss was kind of a wake-up call, and I think that they've learned from that, and the rest of the season they're going to be like a freight train that is near impossible to stop.
Yep, I feel that way as well. Really excited to see what both teams are going to continue to do with the expectations for the women's team being higher, but it's still amazing that we can have them that high because of everything they've been through with coaching changes and roster turnover. Losing someone like Alyssa Peely in the WNBA draft don't usually keep it rolling like Utah has, but they've been able to do it. So really excited to see what both teams continue to do. If you want more on Utah men's and women's basketball, we'll continue to talk to them about this on the show here, as well as Utah football. Elijah, big day for Utah football tomorrow, though.
Yeah, Coach Beck is being introduced along. Well, he's going to be accompanied by Coach Witt and Coach Scally, and so we're going to get our first kind of introduction at hopefully the long-term future of our offense. And I don't know how much insight we're going to get in regards to how much freedom Beck will have with play calling. I'm sure someone will ask, but I think overall it's just really exciting. It kind of signifies a new era with Utah football, and I think it's good to kind of have this moment to be like, okay, this is the moment where we can leave these 2 previous years behind and have like new hope, because the offense for the past 2 years has been the main thing under scrutiny, especially with Cam rising out. And so you kind of have a new era going in from this day, because I know it's coming out tomorrow. From this day forward, you have a new era kind of in Salt Lake City, and I think it's just going to be really cool. And I'll have all of the videos from that press conference on my X account at Elijah G. Murray.
Elijah, appreciate you coming on. Make sure you guys check out his stuff at Athlon Sports. Thanks again, Elijah.
Yeah, thank you. Anytime.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. Like Elijah said, Kyle Whittingham, Jason Beck, Morgan Scally, all of them, they're going to be talking tomorrow. And they're talking. I'm going to continue to keep talking. So we're going to talk about everything that they say on tomorrow's show, as well as react to all the latest news going on around Utah football. Hope to see you tomorrow. Have a great day, everyone.